before we start, I'd like you to see a 3-minute video. It's by a big multinational called GE, and then a 20-second video by one of the semi-government organizations. And after that, we'll talk about what we want to talk about. So thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. The next is 20 seconds, so we'll start talking in 2 seconds. Just bear with me. So while this text comes on, we've all been hearing about things that we should all be doing. Turn the tap off while you're brushing your teeth, etc., etc. We feel this is the wrong battle because the numbers we're going to talk about now prove that human consumption, personal consumption, is a small fraction of what is used in industry and particularly in agriculture. And the simple fact about water is we can't create new water. The water we have on this planet left is the water we have, and that's it. Governments in this region especially, they keep cleaning up seawater, getting salt out. That's an issue they can address and figure out how to do. We at AgriCell feel that the issues facing humanity at a big level are about how we can figure out to save the water we waste in agriculture. 90% of all the water used in agriculture, whether it's in greenhouses, in the soil, in any new technology that you've heard of, 90% of that water is wasted, either in evaporation or seepage in the ground. It is completely wasted. Nobody's really thought about how to fix this problem. We've been running commercial farms in Japan for the last 3.5, 4 years, and we think we've got a solution to this. So I'd like to just take you some figures. You've all heard these figures before. 2.5% of the water in the world is used for drinking and personal use and industry and agriculture. It's a small fraction. The water logged in the glaciers in the North Pole and the South Pole, we cannot touch. So now I'm just trying to get you in, just to get a sense of how little the water is that we have remaining to use for growing our food. And this is a simple way of looking at it. We're talking about 0.007% of that water in the world. So yes, it's good to look at the personal issues. I'm not saying that you shouldn't turn the tap off when you brush your teeth, all the things you saw in the videos from GE and FAO, but we think that's a battle that, yes, we can all do. I'm sure some of us in this room do, some don't. But the bigger battle is to figure out how do we save 90% of the water that we think is wasted in agriculture. So please bear with us.
If you pressed it. There is a more meaningful battle as well in addition to this. And that's with regards to water scarcity and food security. The problem is governments around the world are addressing this in the wrong way. These governments are buying land in Africa, Asia, and as far afield as Australia. And they're doing this in the hope of supplying food for their local population. Now, whilst on paper that makes sense, if you have the money, go buy the land and we'll see what happens. The problem is food production is a zero-sum game. There are two main variables for food production, land and water. And these are diminishing at a rate never seen before. So whilst these governments are able to actually secure food for their local population, what they're doing is ultimately taking food off somebody else's plate. And that's hardly a solution for food security at a global level. Now, if we fast forward 20, 50, 100 years in the future, what's the scenario? The population will top 10 billion. Water will be even more scarce than it is now, and land will be even less arable. If we continue to consume water at the current rates, the stress points in our agricultural ecosystem will break. We've seen signs of this throughout history, but more recently in 2008, when the prices of staple foods such as tomatoes and corn increased overnight. You saw people taking to the streets of Egypt, Middle East, and India protesting against these. This is just a precursor to what will happen, and at a much, much larger scale should we continue to consume water at these rates. Now, TEDx have been kind enough to invite us to give you a brief idea of what it is we're doing. I would like to take this 15 minutes of fame and to ask you to dream with me, very briefly, about a world where we use 10% of the current water we're currently using for agriculture. What would that world look like? Well, the numbers up there mean very little to just about everybody on the planet. The fact is there are a lot of zeros there. What these essentially show us is the amount of water that would actually be saved. We're talking quintillions here. What this actually means is if we were able to reutilize this water and save the water, this large number, and then reutilize that using a soilless technology which can be used on any terrain, saline land, contaminated land, desert. If you're able to use that, use local workforce, create local employment, and produce local food, what would that world look like? Well, you'd have local communities creating and sustaining for their own families, feeding these families. The stress points mentioned earlier, which would reach breaking point, would be nowhere near breaking point. And all in all, it would be a much nicer world to live in. But dreams over, back to the present, we're nowhere near there yet. And by the time you, me, and us in this room actually feel these breaking points, it's going to be too late. There's an old cliche that necessity is the mother of all invention. If we need to avoid a dark and calamitous future for our children, their children, and the generations thereafter, the rules of the game have to change, and they have to change now. Fortunately, a professor researching out of Waseda University in Tokyo, Japan, has spent the last 12 years working on an agricultural methodology which does exactly this. This methodology saves water by up to 90%. It reduces the use of fertilizer by 80%. It creates a much more nutritious food. Now, as a side note, there are other technologies being worked on as we speak that we're aware of in the US, Europe, and in Asia. But the fact is, these technologies are all in the R&D stage, and they will take years before they actually get to the market once they've passed all the necessary certifications. This technology, which this professor has been working on, is ready now, here and now. It's actually being commercialized in Japan and is doing extremely well. What we'd like to do is actually show you a glimpse of what the future of agriculture will look like.
It looks like plastic, feels like rubber, but it's actually a biodegradable membrane that dissolves into the ground. The roots attach themselves to this membrane, and it's got billions of holes underneath it. The water and nutrient drip fed into this film is sucked up by the roots as and when the plant needs it. And as a result of that efficiency, they can grow better than most plants can. They can suck up the vitamins, the nutrition, more efficiently than normal ways of looking at plants. And as a result of this, you get sweeter, more tasty, more nutritious food. It has a huge crop yield increase as well. So typically a cherry tomato farmer in Palestine can grow 30 tons per acre. Using this methodology, he can grow 120 tons of more nutritious cherry tomatoes in the same acre. So it's a game changer for agriculture, and it's using 10% of the water. That's it. And just to wrap up, and you can hear the next speaker speak. Both myself and Kunal, we founded this company, and we're very proud of what we're doing, but we're very passionate about this subject. The situation is, if you look at the history of this planet, and I'm talking about the scheme of thousands and millions and thousands and billions of years, at any one point there's a dominant species that stays and dominates this planet. Mother Nature will sustain itself. Somehow it will stay here and planet Earth will be here. We, as a dominant species of the time now, in our last 5 seconds in the clock that we've measured, if we want to sustain us dominance for more than the next 5 seconds, we have to change a lot of things. Amongst the water aspect, we have to change the way we farm for food, grow food locally, and actually do it with a fraction of the resources required, and we can do it now. Thank you very much.